Habitat destruction. Pollution. Biodiversity decline. When you hear those words, not one of them sounds good. In fact, they all describe how we are destroying our Earth, and particularly the ocean. Habitat destruction and pollution, hopefully you all understand what those mean, but I'm guessing most of you are unsure of what biodiversity decline means. Biodiversity refers to the variety of living organisms within and between all species of ecosystems. Today I'm going to show you how people are destroying the ocean and its inhabitants. Recently I had a conversation with my cousin. Her name's Bethany, and she majored in environmental studies at the University of Redlands, and let me tell you what I learned. First off, I'd like to give a few examples of habitat destruction. The majority of life in the ocean and that's located and supported in the coastal zone there is a huge effect that 50% of people live on the coast have to do with that. So that means lots of urban runoff, development, and people in the water. A huge thing that we have done to our coast is remove wetlands and the salt-tolerant plant life. That creates a buffer between the land and the ocean. Removing this buffer increases erosion, which increases turbidity, which is sediment in the water, and the sedimentation on ocean habitats. Increased turbidity and sedimentation not only changes the look of the habitat, but it disrupts a plant's ability to photosynthesize. This is one of the causes of the die-offs of many of the coral reefs. Wetlands also act as a huge filter, so when you remove them, you take away that filter that happens to protect the ocean. Furthermore, it removes the areas of calm, still, shallow, safe waters that make up the nurseries for numerous ocean species, not to mention the displacement of the plants and animals that typically live in that habitat. Development is really to blame for the removal of these wetlands. Habitat destruction doesn't end here, but now I'd like to explore the roots of pollution. Development also contributes to urban runoff. It's like a whole bunch of the stuff you guys throw in the streets or you see in the street. It eventually makes its way into the ocean. There's a lot of sediment, trash, waste, and chemicals that get washed into the ocean. You can imagine how healthy that is to live in. And the thing about urban runoff is that for most of us, it is passive destruction of the ocean. It's simply from us going on just living our lives day by day. Now, as far as people in the ocean, some of that is for recreational purposes, but a lot of it is just a day at the beach playing at the water. But when people come to the beach, they bring all their trash and junk and don't take care of it. Recreational water vehicles also have no requirements for gas efficiency, so their emissions aren't as good as cars, and you find a lot of their pollution in the water. And then furthermore, they create significant noise pollution and disruption to the habitat. Now this has a relatively small effect in comparison to commercial shipping and fishing operations as well as cruise ships. And not only are the ships big pollutants, but they're also part of the habitat destruction as well. The large ships not only leak oil and fuel in their wake, but as you know, they have the potential to cause an enormous hazardous spill. But just in their day-to-day operations going from port to port, one of the worst things they do is move species in their ballast waters, bringing in invasive species, which brings imbalance to an ecosystem and can cause immense damage to the habitat and animal life. A form of destruction specific to cruise ships actually has to do with their ports, because the ports are so big and the ships are deep in the water. They have to take out a bunch of the ocean floor, which is destroying a lot of the habitat. In addition to habitat destruction, they contribute to biodiversity decline. Commercial fishing is a huge force in the ocean. There's like 90% of the world's fisheries are overfished and several have completely collapsed. There's an Alaskan fishery where the fishing season is 1 day a year. The sardine fishery in Peru collapsed several years ago and hasn't shown any signs of recovery. The massive amount of fishing isn't the only problem. How they fish is a problem as well. Bycatch is a huge issue in commercial fishing. Bycatch is when you're fishing for one type of fish, but the way you're fishing, you catch other types of fish that eventually just die and you don't even use them. A certain example is like tuna fish. The fishermen used to catch dolphins with their tuna, and then the dolphins would just die and be dead and they wouldn't use them for anything. So now they created dolphin-safe tuna, but now that the dolphins are safe, sea turtles are getting caught and now they're just dying. And then just a few last points as I jump back to pollution. First is there are all these boundaries in the ocean, but they only have so much meaning in the ocean. It's not like you can build a physical boundary outside of the EEZ, which is 200 miles off of every shore. The EEZ is when you pass into the international waters and there are no rules at all. So commercial ships and yachts and cruise ships and so on, they just throw their trash overboard, and there's no telling where that trash stays out there or if it can come back to the shores. In conclusion, several fish populations migrate over large areas in their lifetime. For example, they might live in one area during their juvenile stage, and then by their adult stage they have migrated hundreds of miles away. So while the adults are in point B, if something happens to disrupt or destroy point A, it could mean the collapse of that species. The point in this being that, one, what happens in the ocean is absolutely a global issue, and two, we don't always know or understand our effect until the damage has been done. We know very little, and the ocean is enormously vast and difficult to study. And there are currents and forces that we can't always control or predict. Therefore, it is impossible to know what the impact will be for particular actions we take. And the ocean, the ocean provides numerous and vast beneficial services to us. For years, we have used the ocean as quite literally our dumping ground. We have intentionally sunk rail cars, trash, all kinds of crud in the ocean because it was easier than dealing with it on land. And now there are arguments that we should capture carbon out of our atmosphere and try and seek it in the ocean. And how can we possibly predict the effects that would have?
So Brian, what did you think?
The beginning got my attention. Throughout the speech was a little monotone at parts, and you had a lot of facts in there, so yeah, I learned a lot. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. The attention device, I think, is... I can watch the time. The attention device is fine. You've got the slides that you're showing us on the overhead. That's the only place that we get any visual material, and so you're not really adding to the understanding with the visuals. It's mostly just used to get us to identify what the topic is and get our attention. I thought you had a very clear thesis statement. I didn't think that the preview was clearly set up. Internally, I thought there was a little bit more structure. The transition from the first point to the second point was clear. Once you got to the third point, it seemed a little bit like you're wandering around on that particular subject matter. I heard lots of claims. I didn't hear a lot of signposting, a lot of citing of the material that you're presenting. If you're quoting the conclusions of researchers, that would give it greater credibility if you, identify those sources. Otherwise, it just seems like you're describing what you believe to be the case. I'm imagining the whole situation, for instance, with cruise ships, and I'm thinking, well, okay, cruise ship in a spot, maybe 10 of them, 20 of them, I don't know how many in a particular port, but how much space do they take up in these wetlands or environmental zones that you're talking about? I don't get any kind of comparative terminology on that, and what's the measurable impact? I got a description of what it would be in that one particular location.